Jarvan Rusa presents the audiobook Atom Heart Life, Odyssey of Love and War by Mohammed Yassin. In 2013, the California Investigative Reporting Project (CIA) published a report that found that at least 150 women had been sterilized in California prisons between 2006 and 2010 without their required state approvals. The CIA report found that the women who were sterilized were often poor, minority women who were mentally ill or had disabilities. They were often pressured into signing consent forms without understanding what they were signing. In some cases, the women were even sterilized without their knowledge or consent. The CIA report also found that the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation (CDCR) had failed to properly supervise the doctors who were performing the sterilizations. As a result, some of the doctors were able to perform sterilizations without the required state approvals. The CDCR denied any wrongdoing, but after the CIA report was published, the California Department of Public Health launched an investigation. The investigation found that the CDCR had violated state law by failing to obtain the required approvals for the sterilizations. The investigation also found that the CDCR had failed to properly supervise the doctors who were performing the sterilizations. In 2014, the CDCR implemented new policies and procedures to ensure that sterilizations are only performed in accordance with state law. The CDCR also paid out $4.1 million in settlements to the women who had been sterilized without their consent. The sterilization of women in California prisons without their consent is a serious human rights violation. It is important to remember this case. Moreover, there have been other cases of women being sterilized without their consent in various parts of the world. Here are a few examples. In the United States, there have been numerous reports of women being sterilized without their consent in prisons, hospitals, and other institutions. In some cases, the women were told that the sterilization was a necessary medical procedure, when in fact it was not. In other cases, the women were pressured into signing consent forms without understanding what they were signing. In Canada, there have been reports of Indigenous women being sterilized without their consent as part of a government-funded eugenics program that lasted from the 1930s to the 1970s. In India, there have been reports of women being sterilized without their consent in exchange for government benefits. In China, there have been reports of women being sterilized without their consent as part of the country's one-child policy. In addition to the above, here are some other examples of accidents where women have been sterilized without their consent. In 2004, a hospital in South Africa sterilized 27 women without their consent while they were undergoing cesarean sections. In 2005, a doctor in Mexico sterilized 11 women without their consent while they were undergoing other medical procedures. In 2010, a doctor in the United States sterilized a 17-year-old girl with intellectual disabilities without her consent. These are just a few examples from what was revealed and published, and there are many other cases that have gone unreported. The landscape of global politics is plagued by a nefarious nexus comprising the spread of terrorism, support for fascist regimes, and the exploitation of resources to incite conflicts, particularly between economically challenged nations. This malevolent strategy, orchestrated by certain vested interests, aims to sow discord, incite conflicts, and seize control over valuable resources. Moreover, the manipulation of terrorist organizations, political shifts in major countries, and the disregard for the impact of dam-building activities by river-source nations further exacerbate these threats, leading to a cycle of instability and strife. For example, using terrorism as a political tool and its chameleon nature. So the utilization of terrorism as a political tool to achieve certain ends is a strategy employed by various actors on the global stage. Terrorist groups, often manipulated or indirectly supported by state actors, are used to instigate fear, create chaos, and advance specific political agendas. These groups often display a chameleon-like ability to adapt, evolve, and re-emerge under different banners, leveraging changes in global political landscapes. With changes in leadership in major countries, the support for different factions or the withdrawal of support for existing groups can lead to the rise and fall of terrorist organizations. New administrations might bring about shifts in foreign policy, altering alliances and support for certain groups, consequently shaping the geopolitical arena and the dynamics of these terrorist entities. as well as support for fascist regimes. It's a menace to democracy and human rights. The backing of fascist regimes by external powers often results in the suppression of democratic processes, human rights violations, and the consolidation of authoritarian control within nations. These regimes thrive on propaganda, oppression, and fear-mongering, allowing a select few to maintain power and exploit resources for their gain. The rise and sustenance of these regimes not only infringe upon the sovereignty and rights of nations, but also contribute to internal turmoil and social unrest. The backing and support of such regimes often align with the geopolitical interests of certain powerful nations, disregarding the plight of the affected populace. Moreover, the exploitation of resources and the emergence of water wars, the manipulation of resources, particularly the deliberate incitement of conflicts over water and wealth, is a sinister tactic employed to create chaos among nations. Water, a vital resource, has become a contentious issue, especially when some nations positioned as the source of rivers construct dams without considering the downstream impact on neighboring countries. The unequal distribution of water due to dam building and resource exploitation can lead to shortages, famine, and economic disparity, turning affected nations into breeding grounds for conflicts and violence. This results in a vicious cycle where nations fight over limited resources, destabilizing the region and leading to further manipulation by external actors. So, neglecting the consequences of dam construction is a catalyst for conflict. The construction of dams by river-source countries, without adequate consideration for the downstream impact, poses a significant threat to regional stability. The alteration of natural river flows and the restriction of water access to neighboring nations can have dire consequences, leading to economic, agricultural, and environmental challenges. The failure of international bodies and powerful nations to intervene and address these imbalances perpetuates grievances, allowing for the exacerbation of tensions and the potential for conflict. The neglect of these consequences not only undermines the rights of downstream nations, but also contributes to a volatile environment, ripe for exploitation and manipulation. In the intricate fabric of our global reality, the specters of terrorism, support for fascist regimes, and the exploitation of resources unravel a harrowing narrative. This tale tells of a world ensnared in the shackles of division forged by tribal, ethnic, and ideological classifications that obscure our shared origins. It beckons for a profound reawakening, a transcendence of our limiting boundaries, and a resurgence of our collective humanity. So, reimagining humanity beyond divisions and facades is a call to arms that resonates with a plea to remember our fundamental interconnectedness. It's an invocation to cast aside the shadows of self-interest and societal facades, and to embrace the common lineage we share, tracing back to our ancestral roots like Adam and Eve. The narrative shifts to a realization that, as brothers and sisters in this shared human story, we are bound by an unwritten oath never to let one another languish in hunger, violence, or displacement. This narrative weaves a tapestry of unity, underlining that our true civilization isn't determined by the opulence of possessions or the supremacy of wealth. Rather, it's in the depth of our compassion, the breadth of our empathy, and the resilience of our shared respect for one another. Moreover, crafting a symphony of transparent, human-centric policies to navigate the labyrinth of discord and manipulation, a symphony of international cooperation, echoing the chords of transparency and compassion, must resound. This symphony is composed of policies that reflect the harmonious notes of our shared human essence, transcending the myopic visions of self-gain and delving into the harmonies of fair resource distribution and the symmetries of individual rights. The allure of such policies lies in their resonance with a greater truth, that in fostering understanding and empathy, we build a stronger alliance that transcends mere material gain, ideations, or political affiliations. It's a call to cultivate an orchestra of understanding, empathy, and solidarity, a symphony that weaves a melody of respect and justice for all. So, the measuring the pulse of civilization by the heartbeats of humanity, where the essence of true civilization lies not in the clinks of wealth nor in the advancements of technology, but in the echoes of our collective empathy and the symphony of our shared values. It is measured not by the monuments we build, but by the humanity we infuse in our dealings with one another. The narrative unfolds to reveal a society measured by its treatment of the marginalized, its commitment to justice, and its dedication to fostering a culture of peace. This civilization finds its zenith in the richness of its compassion and in the threads of empathy that interlace its societal fabric. The world's anthem for peace and stability echoes through the corridors of our shared human story. It is a call to reawaken our humanity, to bridge the divides of tribe and ideology, and to foster a tapestry woven from the threads of empathy, respect, and compassion. Also, in this journey towards global harmony, it is in the symphony of our shared existence that we find the chords of solidarity and the music of understanding. Together, let us craft a melody that resonates with the echoes of our collective humanity, a symphony that will lead us to a more civilized, harmonious world. But, amidst the intricate dance of global power dynamics, a saga unfolds, a tale of 5 major countries entangled in a dispute over the distribution of spoils. There thickens with tension as each vies for a larger slice of the pie, and the echoes of their desires reverberate across borders, inflaming discord and conflict. But this narrative takes a darker turn as the top contenders jostle for dominance. Countries within their proximity fall prey to their voracious appetites. The once predictable fabric of international relations becomes frayed as bordering nations are ruthlessly plundered. Disputes simmer, and in regions where their territories overlap, the smoldering embers of tension threaten to erupt into the flames of full-scale conflict. Enter the stage, the behemoth that is America, as the largest player on the global chessboard. Its aspirations lean towards maintaining an unchallenged position as the singular pole of the world. But how does it aspire to achieve this lofty ambition? In the twisted calculus of power, America's strategy takes on a grim hue. Recognizing the rising prowess of its primary competitors, Russia and China, it devises a nefarious plan to quell their ascendancy. With a calculated intent to maintain its dominance, America seeks to widen the gap between itself and its rivals, and in a chilling maneuver, it plunges headlong into sowing discord and conflict. Fueling was aimed at draining the strength of its adversaries. The art of this saga lies not merely in the starkness of power play, but in the nuanced complexities of the tale of aspirations, greed, and the shadowy corridors of geopolitics. In this riveting chronicle of international power struggles, the intricate web of engagements is woven with threads of clandestine intentions and strategic maneuvering. The central players, locked in a tussle for supremacy, overlook the collateral damage inflicted on the neighboring nations, whose lands become battlegrounds for a far grander game. In this saga of subterfuge, the pivotal characters America, Russia, and China contribute to the rising tensions, a crescendo of conflict that reverberates far beyond their immediate borders. The narrative teems with high-stakes gambits, strategic manipulations, and the human cost overshadowed by the grand pursuit of global dominance. But as this story unfolds, it's not just a tale of clashing empires. It's a gripping saga of the human toll, a cautionary narrative that bears witness to the fragility of international relations and the perils of unbridled ambition. The lands ravaged in this pursuit are not merely geopolitical chess pieces but homes, cultures, and livelihoods shattered by the tumult of power struggles. The essence of this narrative is not solely the power games of nations, but the intricate dance between the intrinsic human traits ambition, greed, and the relentless pursuit of supremacy. In this storytelling tapestry, the true cost of conflict and the repercussions of unchecked power are starkly evident. This saga paints a vivid canvas of caution, a somber reminder of the fragility of peace and the grave consequences of self-serving ambition. It calls for a reflection on the moral compass of nations, challenging the machinations of power in pursuit of a more stable, harmonious world. At the heart of this engaging storytelling lies the poignant question: is the pursuit of power worth the devastation it leaves in its wake? The tale remains unfinished, but the lessons it imparts are crystal clear: the need for compassion, empathy, and a collective effort to forge a future where the quest for dominance doesn't overshadow the value of human lives and global harmony. In the vast geopolitical chessboard, Ukraine's yearning to join NATO served as a beacon of hope. For decades, the nation, nestled in Eastern Europe, sought the protective embrace of the alliance, aiming to shield itself from Russia's looming shadow. The dream of joining NATO was a long-held desire, rooted in the tumultuous history that followed the dissolution of the Soviet Union. With aspirations of security and autonomy, Ukraine eagerly awaited the promise of stability and protection under NATO's wing. The geopolitical landscape, however, is a dynamic terrain where alliances shift like tectonic plates. The United States, spearheading NATO, had been delaying Ukraine's accession, a calculated move in the global power play. The delay wasn't merely a cautious step, but a strategic maneuver, a pawn in a larger game aimed at containing Russia. The tensions escalated as Russia perceived the situation as a direct threat to its dominion, considering Ukraine an integral part of its sphere of influence. The echoes of history reverberate within the corridors of power. The past becomes a grim oracle, foretelling the dangers of great powers exploiting the vulnerabilities of others. Just as the US meticulously baited the Soviet Union into the quagmire of Afghanistan in the 1980s, there's a haunting possibility that the same playbook might be dusted off for Russia. The strategic intent seems clear: to draw Russia into a draining conflict, sapping its strength and resilience, akin to the Soviet Union's exhaustion in Afghanistan. The intricate web of global politics often blurs the lines between allies and adversaries. In this shadow dance of power, the exploitation of a rival's vulnerabilities becomes a game of patience and timing. The delayed accession of Ukraine to NATO becomes not just a shield for protection, but a potential gambit in a larger scheme to test and erode Russia's power, waiting for the opportune moment to stretch its capacities and resources. The geopolitical storm clouds gather ominously. Ukraine's desire for security and NATO's strategic delay intertwine in a narrative that foretells the perilous prospects of an exploited vulnerability. The looming conflict appears to be a tragedy in the making, where the destiny of nations seems entwined in a power struggle not entirely of their own making. Amidst the grand designs of nations and powers, it's essential not to lose sight of the human toll. The consequences of such strategic gamesmanship are often borne by the ordinary citizens caught in the crossfire. The lives disrupted, families torn apart, and the communities shattered are the poignant reminders of the real cost of geopolitical ambitions. In the canvas of existence, the pendulum swings between progress and peril, between the luminous promise of scientific advancement and the dark underbelly of manipulation. As tensions simmer and the drumbeats of conflict grow louder, the need for wisdom and diplomacy emerges as a beacon in the storm. Yet, like puppeteers orchestrating a malevolent spectacle, the elite play a dangerous game, leveraging these rising tensions to serve their nefarious ambitions. The fragile equilibrium between progress and chaos teeters on a precipice. Beneath the surface of global discourse, the elite craft a narrative woven with threads of discord and fear. They exploit uncertainties, magnifying perceived threats that emanate from scientific progress. As the tendrils of this discord reach farther, the genuine marvels of science become shrouded in a mist of apprehension, concealing their inherent benefits. In the ballet of manipulation, the elite choreograph a symphony of misinformation and exploitation. By sowing seeds of doubt and inflating dangers, they amplify the stakes around scientific innovation. Hijacking its noble intentions for their selfish gains, the subversion of truth becomes a tool in their arsenal, breeding an atmosphere where the very essence of progress morphs into a cloak of trepidation. The relentless march towards catastrophe looms ominously. The crescendo of manufactured fears and amplified risks pushes humanity towards the edge of a precipice. The consequences of this elaborate manipulation threaten to plunge the world into a catastrophic confrontation, where the ramifications would reverberate across all borders and societies. The future is a mosaic of uncertainties painted against the canvas of geopolitics. The threads of power, vulnerability, and human aspirations interweave in a narrative yet to be written. The fate of Ukraine, the machinations of global powers, and the quest for stability remain a cliffhanger, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. In the grand theatre of geopolitics, the story of Ukraine's desire for NATO accession and the underlying power play between global powers sets the stage for a gripping and tense narrative. As the plot thickens, the unpredictability of the future leaves us on the edge of our seats, wondering about the destiny of nations and the lives entangled within. The game of power and strategy is fraught with risks, and the unfolding saga may well reshape the contours of international relations, leaving an indelible mark on the world stage. The global stage has been set with a mosaic of alliances and tensions. Among these, NATO, a formidable coalition comprising the likes of America, Canada, England, France, Germany, Turkey, and various other European nations, casts a shadow of power and influence. North Atlantic Treaty Organization NATO is a political and military alliance among 30 member states headquartered in Brussels, Belgium. It was established in 1949 to counter the threat of the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact. NATO's fundamental goal is to safeguard of its members through political and military means. In the annals of geopolitics, NATO stands as a formidable force of bulwark against perceived threats and a vanguard for peace. Yet, beneath the lofty ideals of security and democracy, shadows loom, revealing a narrative tinged with power struggles and sacrifices. The alliance's role in weakening the Soviet Union and its purported mission to ensure European security mask a more complex tale, one that holds Europe's fate precariously entwined with American hegemony and the haunting spectre of nuclear conflict. The tale begins with the Cold War's intense throes, where NATO, a coalition of Western powers, stood firm against the Soviet Union's expansive ambitions. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked a turning point, seemingly heralding an era of peace and stability. NATO's stated goals of ensuring European security and promoting democracy were lauded, yet the subtle undercurrent of power dynamics and influence began to whisper a different story. The alliance's surface motivations of preserving peace and democracy served as a cloak for deeper intentions. While purportedly safeguarding Europe against external threats, NATO's actions, including the transfer of conflict zones with Russia to Eastern European territories, echoed a narrative of American hegemony. The strategic positioning of American and European nuclear warheads in close proximity to Russia's heart-raised concerns, whispering a harrowing tale of sacrifice lurking beneath the fard of security. The haunting truth of Europe's vulnerability in the face of a nuclear conflict emerged starkly. The prevailing winds, dictating the trajectory of nuclear dust, illustrated the perilous fate Europe might face in the event of a catastrophic war emanating from the east. The harrowing aftermath of the Chernobyl disaster in 1986, with its nuclear fallout reaching Europe, served as a chilling reminder of the potential consequences should conflict and nuclear devastation strike closer to home. The intricate web of power dynamics in geopolitics leaves Europe precariously positioned. While ostensibly allied with NATO for security, the region finds itself entangled in the web of a sacrifice, caught between the ambitions and strategic maneuvers of larger powers. The spectre of being a pawn in a larger game, where the stakes include sacrificing Europe's safety for broader geopolitical ends, casts a foreboding shadow over the continent. The human toll, the destabilization, and the potential jeopardy to Europe's safety become focal points in a narrative where power clashes overshadow the essence of collective security. The horizon remains uncertain, wavering between the veneer of security and the spectre of sacrifice. The fate of Europe and its entanglement within the intricate power play between NATO, America, and Russia becomes a gripping and perilous saga yet to reach its denouement. In the gripping saga of NATO's role in shaping global geopolitics, the shadows of power and sacrifice converge upon Europe. The alliance's professed intentions to safeguard the continent may not shield it from becoming a battleground or a sacrifice zone in the face of larger power struggles. As the tale unfolds, Europe stands at the precipice, its destiny entwined in a narrative where power dynamics dictate a complex dance between security and sacrifice. However, this looming coalition's expansion into territories bordering Russia has not only sparked dissatisfaction, but ignited the flames of discord and conflict, most notably concerning Ukraine. NATO, a bastion of power and security, stands tall, woven from the collective strength of its member nations. However, the alliance's expansion towards countries bordering Russia, notably Ukraine, acted as a catalyst for tension. Russia's discontent festered as the prospect of American nuclear warheads positioned at their very borders loomed, causing alarm and discomfort within the Kremlin's chambers. The discontent in Moscow was not merely an idle disquiet, but a fulcrum for action. Russia, feeling encroached upon, turned to unconventional means to safeguard its perceived interests. Support for separatist factions in Ukraine, both financially and with military equipment, became a strategy, creating a pretext for intervention. The separatists, seemingly pawns in this geopolitical chess game, served as both a shield and a tool, blurring the lines between autonomy and external manipulation. The delicate balance of power in Eastern Europe teetered on the edge. The brewing discontent and covert support sowed seeds of conflict. The Ukrainian territory, once a backdrop to the ambitions of global powers, became a battleground where the lines between influence, sovereignty, and manipulation blurred. The narrative of shifting alliances took center stage. As NATO expanded its reach, Russia scrambled to counterbalance, not only to protect its perceived interests but to resist what it deemed an encroachment upon its very doorstep. The unfolding drama painted a picture of geopolitical chess, where every move had dire consequences. Amidst this stage where power danced with power, the human cost was often relegated to the sidelines. Families torn apart, lives lost, and communities shattered became collateral damage in the grand designs of global players. The conflict didn't just disrupt borders but carved deep wounds in the lives of ordinary citizens caught in the crossfire of geopolitical ambitions. The future, veiled in ambiguity, hung in the balance. The choices made by nations and their leaders determined the trajectory of an unpredictable narrative. The fate of Ukraine, the aspirations of Russia, and the formidable might of NATO remained intertwined in a tale that remained unwritten. The dance between global alliances and the searing tensions around Ukraine's fate painted a picture of power, manipulation, and human consequences. The shadows cast by expanding alliances and discontent entangle the fate of nations and the lives of ordinary citizens. The story, a gripping and tense narrative, is an unfolding saga waiting for the next chapter to reveal the destiny of nations and the lives entwined in the intricate tapestry of global power play. The chessboard of geopolitics unfolds with a gripping narrative of power, sanctions, and economic interdependence. Russia's incursion into Ukraine triggered a chain of events that reverberated globally, leading to economic sanctions imposed by the United States and its European allies. However, Russia's resilience in the face of these sanctions, coupled with its retaliatory measures, painted a compelling story of economic warfare, intertwined with promises and political maneuvering that stirred unrest and burdens within Europe. Following Russia's entry into Ukraine, the thunderous response of economic sanctions from America and its European allies seemed to be a potent weapon. Funds frozen, restrictions on Russian businessmen, and assets confiscated abroad marked a global retaliation. However, Russia, known for its resilience, appeared to weather the storm of these sanctions, showcasing an unexpected ability to recover despite the economic blows dealt by the West. In the labyrinth of international relations, retaliatory measures emerged as Russia's weapon of choice. Counter-sanctions, particularly targeting European countries and the restriction of gas exports, revealed the intricate interdependence between Russia's resources and Europe's economic machinery. The dependence of European nations on Russian gas, nearly 75, for industrial processes and power generation became a pivotal piece in this complex power play. Amidst this economic quagmire, America, the staunch ally, made promises to alleviate the crisis. However, the solutions presented appeared to be temporary measures rather than radical ones. Behind the facade of assistance lay a deeper political maneuver, seemingly entangling Europe in crises that burdened its economy and hindered its progression. The stage was set for a struggle that transcended mere economics. It was a battle for European stability. The burden of sanctions and counter-sanctions placed Europe on a tightrope, teetering between economic dependency and political allegiance. The precarious balance threatened not just economic stability, but the broader progress of the continent. The looming turmoil, a consequence of this economic warfare, painted a bleak picture for Europe. Caught between the clashing powers of America and Russia, the continent faced a daunting dilemma. The promises of resolution from America seemed to serve a deeper political motive, dragging Europe into a quagmire that shackled its economic growth and stability. Amidst this tussle of power and economic pressures, a cry for European sovereignty echoed through the corridors of political decision-making. The call for autonomy from the shackles of dependency emerged as a clarion call. The need for Europe to chart its own course, free from the entrapments of external powers, gained resonance. The future remained an unwritten narrative, teeming with uncertainty and the weight of geopolitical power plays. The fate of Europe, entwined within the struggle between Russia and America, left the continent perched at a precipice. How the story unfolds, whether Europe will break free from the entanglements and write its own destiny, remains a suspenseful and compelling chapter yet to be unveiled. In the riveting saga of power, sanctions, and economic struggles, the tale of Russia, America, and Europe unfolds as a complex and tumultuous story. The economic warfare waged between these global powers reverberated across continents, placing Europe at the epicenter of a power struggle that threatened its economic stability and progression. As the story unfolds, The fate of Europe hinges on the choices made amidst this entangled web of political maneuvering and economic dependencies. As the frost of winter encroaches, a looming energy crisis casts a shadow, bringing forth a gripping narrative of struggles and adversity. The chilling reality of this impending crisis manifests in closed factories, soaring inflation, escalating prices, rising unemployment, and pervasive power outages. These adversities have cast a pall over society, exacerbating not only economic woes but also fostering an environment ripe for the spread of crime. As the cold breath of winter descends, the energy crisis tightens its grip on the landscape. Factories, once bustling centers of industry and employment, stand idle, closed due to the scarcity of energy resources. The production lines, once alive with activity, fall silent, leaving workers idle and industries paralyzed. The economic machinery grinds to a halt, foreboding a bleak and uncertain future.
We're glad you made it this far. If our video ignited something within you, we're honored. Join our Javan Rusa community to explore more and be part of our journey.